Hello, and welcome to this session of Back Again from the Broken Land. This game is being run as part of Gauntlet Community Open Gaming. The Gauntlet is a kind of social network for RPG folks to play, to kibitz, to argue the finer details of what makes a game a good game. It's open to many folks. You can join through the Patreon or just join as a participant. And Gauntlet Community Open Gaming is a time when the Gauntlet makes a special effort to recruit new gamers who might not have played with us before and would like a weekend that's all about welcoming new folks. And so the next time you see one of these open, if you're watching this stream, know that we'd love to play with you. I'm Leah Sargent. I'm the co-writer of Back Again from the Broken Lands, which I wrote with my husband, Alexi Sargent of Cloven Pine Games. You can check out the game in the Gauntlet's Codex, Home Edition, which is a magazine of RPGs and delightful miscellany. And I'd love to have each of our players just introduce themselves, just give your name, pronouns, and if you want people to be able to find you on the internet, you are most welcome to tell them, but you may otherwise keep your anonymity. I'm Leah, she, her, on Twitter, @Leah Labresco. Brian?
I'm Brian, he, him. No fun if you find me on the internet.
Kim?
I'm Kim, she or they, and I don't really exist on the internet.
Nice.
I'm Danielle, she, her, and I'm @Built-A-House on Twitter.
My name's Philip, he, him, and I think that's enough for now.
All right, so this is mostly, it's a scavenger hunt. You can try and find these people on the internet, but you may or may not like what you discover. In this game, Back Again from the Broken Land, we'll be playing a story of small people who played a crucial part in a big war and are now making the long and still somewhat perilous journey home to see what remains of their home in the aftermath of this war and how each of them has been changed by their journey and their fight. This is a game heavily inspired by The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, which put as much weight on the aftermath of a war as on the winning of it. To start with, we're going to make some choices about that war and about our world. And I'm going to just kind of go around our circle as we answer questions. So to begin with, in Back Again from the Broken Lands, we have just defeated the Doomslord. Now, the Doomslord was an entity seeking goal and wielding weapon. We're going to pick each of those things. Brian, was the Doomslord a corrupted immortal, a grasping wizard, a vicious warlord, a spurned heir, an enormous beast, or a living storm?
The rules let me roll for this, right?
You may roll or you may pick. It's entirely up to you.
Rolling. I got a 1.
All right.
So that's the first of those, presumably?
A corrupted immortal.
Hell yeah.
All right. Kim, with the Doomlord seeking dominion over the world, revenge on former friends, an end to time, elimination of all but their own creations, forbidden knowledge, or deliverance from their curse.
An end to time.
An end to time. All right. Danielle, were they wielding an army twisted into monstrosities, a titanic sword dripping with poison, a simple stone with the power to see all, an insinuating voice of compulsion, magic that strained the fabric of creation, or their terrible shadow?
I think that magic that strained the fabric of creation seems fitting for their goal.
All right. Magic that strained the fabric of creation. All right, Philip, in happier news, what is your hometown characterized by? Green rolling hills and houses covered in plant life? Salty breezes and cozy burrows within sand dunes? Swamp full of croaking critters and houses up on stilts? Aurora borealis and huts of whalebone hide and snow? Craggy peaks with homes nestled in the crevices? Vast fields of wheat and warm but ramshackle cottages?
I think I like the swamp full of croaking critters best.
All right. Swamp of croaking critters and houses on stilts. All right, and going back round, snake draft style, so it's you again, Philip. What quest drew you from your hometown to play a humble but crucial role in the Doomslord's downfall? Delivering knowledge of a secret weakness to the Doomslord's great foe? Carrying a magic you could not understand to the army amassed against the Doomslord? Restoring a lost crown to its heir to rally the nations against the Doomslord? Transporting the true name of the Doomslord to someone with the wisdom to use it? Sabotaging the Doomslord's weapon by being too small to be noticed? Carrying a small light to a hero lost in a dark place?
Are they all fantastic? But I guess I will go for the fourth one, transporting the true name, because I think that ties in well with the magic and fabric of reality.
All
I
right.
like that best.
I love it. Transporting the true name of the Doomslord to someone with the wisdom to use it. Now, the Doomslord is defeated, but the Doomslord's terrible hunters are still traveling the world, causing trouble and danger. Danielle, what makes the Doomslord's hunters too dangerous to fight? They ride terrifying mounts. They each have many grasping hands. They can command the elements of nature. When you strike one down, two spring back up. They spew acid and poisons. They wear impenetrable armor.
I am going to roll for this one. And we got 3. They can command the elements of nature.
Oh boy. All right.
Just making our lives more difficult.
And Kim, what makes the Doomslord's hunters too terrifying to face? They wear the faces of fallen friends. They speak in the voices of people you left back home. They drain their surroundings of warmth, light, and color. They linger in your head if you look them in the eye. They inhale happiness and exhale despair. They shine with terrifying righteousness.
I'm going to pick they speak in the voices of people you left back home.
Ooh, so mean, so cruel of you to pick this. Excellent. All right. Now, I'll warn you at the beginning that, each of you has one special move that goes with your playbook, but there are only a few basic moves here. You can chart a course to kind of move along your journey. You can negotiate an obstacle so that as you're traveling, you handle a particular challenge. You can gaze into the distance, which is a way to cope with the burdens you carry and name them. And you can share a meal, which allows you to have fellowship and possibly clear those named burdens. But in moments of peril, when the hunters appear, you have only 3 moves, because as we just agreed, the Doomslord's hunters are too dangerous to fight and too terrifying to face. So when the hunters appear, you may run, hide, or make a desperate stand. And just as a little overview of what these moves will be all about, running is what it sounds like. Hiding is what it sounds like. When you make a desperate stand, you'll tell a story of doom. And at the beginning, you only have 2 options. You'll have a narrow escape, but once you use that up, you can't use it again. And you can be captured and twisted to the hunter's purpose. So it will take running or hiding. It will take hiding to be able to unlock any alternate ways to deal with the hunters. But at the outset, you can escape once and you can succumb. Those will be your starting options.
Okay.
And the other thing I want to kind of flag about the game as we begin is that you'll start with a certain number of unnamed burdens. You might take on more as we go, but your goal as a character is to be able to name what burdens you and to hopefully be able to release your burdens. And just to give an example, you might, there are different moves that allow you to name a burden that will happen when you tell a story about what's happened so far on your journey. So when you name a burden, your character is ready to try to make amends, to forgive themselves, or otherwise attempt to clear it. Until you name a burden, it's something you're keeping too far distant from yourself to be able to grapple with. So a burglar might gaze into the distance after telling a story of the journey and name a burden by revealing, for example, that he is carrying the cloak pin of a sword maiden who died defending your party, and that he promised to return the cloak pin to her father, but has not done this yet. Now, when you name a burden on your character sheet, you'll just write in a name for that burden, and you choose what that name is. So for that burglar and his unreturned cloak pin, he could write down simply the cloak pin, or he might write down lethargy, or cowardice, or despair, whatever feels right about why he hasn't returned this to her father. When you clear a burden, you'll take some kind of action, which might be a big exterior action about making things right with reference to your burden, or it might be an interior action of accepting hope, offering forgiveness. That's entirely up to you. Does that make sense to begin with? At the end of the game, the kind of homecoming you have will vary based on how many named and unnamed burdens you have. All right. With that all said, let's start by introducing your characters. And I'm going to, let's see. I'm going to go still in StreamYard order. So I'm going to start with Brian, then Kim, then Danielle, and Philip again. If you tell us your character's name, their pronouns, their gear, gaze, and gift.
Sweet. So I'm playing the bodyguard, Conrold Rumble. He, him. His gear is far more knives than are visible. His gaze is stalwart and shadowed, and his gift is the softest boots.
Excellent. Kim?
I am playing the Wayfinder. Her name, or their name, is Autumn Silverward. Their pronouns are she or they. Their gear is barefoot. Their gaze is calculating and curious, and their gift is the song of an unseen bird.
I'm playing the shepherd, Violet, and I don't have her last name yet, but she, her, and she has a much mended cloak, and she has kind of the wide-eyed and wandering gaze, and her gift is a lantern that can always be lit.
I'm playing Todd. He comes from a poor family called the Burnt Oats. Sometimes maybe people call them Burnt Oats. So he has his brother's hand-me-downs. His gaze is bright and believing, but he carries this dead branch that only blooms for him.
Excellent. All right. And as we begin our story, you guys are on your way home. And you have, begin your journey. Oh, and I'll say one last thing, which is we'll take, about a break every hour and possibly a little closer space together if my baby needs to eat. So we'll definitely take at least one nursing break during the game. All right. So we begin our story on the steel-sown field. This wasn't a battle, that is a battle from earlier in the war. You're traveling back home, picking your way across former battles. And many, but not all of the combatants have been buried. But the whole field is just festooned with weapons, discarded pieces of armor, unclaimed bodies. There's a lot of rot and decay, a surprising lack of rust where the metal is. And let's see, Kim, what has sprung up amidst the battle's detritus since the battle was fought?
Vines. Little white flowers.
Yeah, there's a kind of shelter for all of you. I think when we find you initially, you might be behind a large breastplate of a very large person, much larger than your type of folk. And you can see, circling overhead, there are still some greater crows that have become ever larger and more dangerous as they've been glutted with with the bodies piled up by this war. To get home, you'll have to cross this battlefield. What's your plan?
Should someone chart a course? Is that the sort of level of thing that's appropriate right now?
I think we can start by charting a course or by negotiating an obstacle, which is how to stay hidden from those greater crows.
For negotiating an obstacle, can you give me a little bit of guidance on what the stats correspond to in doing that? Absolutely.
So here on negotiate an obstacle, you can choose what stat you're rolling with as long as it kind of matches what you're telling me you're doing in the fiction. So, to get around crows, if your plan is, we'll just move very quickly, that would certainly be a swift. Keen might be finding an unexpected advantage or way of concealing yourself, being sneakier about it. True might be holding to some piece of advice you've been given. It's more about personal integrity, some part of who you are being expressed through what you're doing. True might also be if you were faced with an temptation to lie past an obstacle and refuse to do it, certainly.
Got it. Cool.
Do you have something in mind, Brian?
Not yet. I wanted a better sense of my choices. Mm-hmm. If somebody else has something, I'd happily follow.
I'm not sure how it would work mechanically, but I feel like I know that the crows are least active at high noon.
All right, so your plan is to wait out until the crows are less active.
Right. And that's not like we'll have to have some other part of the plan, but...
Well, tell me a little about what you and your companions are doing while you shelter under this breastplate as you wait. How do you pass the time together and all huddled together?
We're like fairly well sheltered. I think given how much moving we're gonna have to do and for how long, now might be a reasonable time to share a meal.
Absolutely. All right. Well, who is preparing the rations here?
I'm happy to cook.
All right.
I would. Okay.
You want to? Go for it, dude.
Sorry, yeah, I was gonna say that if we're all huddled there, I feel like Violet would be like, okay, who's got rations? Do you have food? Do you, etc. So I think that she would definitely try and gather up something, whether or not we can actually, I don't think we can probably set a fire or anything here, but at least gathering some stuff, trying to pool the food that we have. And
does everyone share a meal?
It can be however many people are partaking. So if you're all clustered under a breastplate, I think it's all of you.
Cool. Are folks down? Sorry, yeah. I'm looking up the list of stories from home.
Yeah. All right, Danielle, why don't you tell us about the meal and roll plus true here?
Okay, so I think that there's probably some road bread that's dry and some somebody might have some dried meat, and so we're trying to and I think maybe from some of the vines or found something edible that's green to kind of create these little sandwiches that she's trying to make them at least a little bit better tasting as she's assembling it. And probably let me roll first. Okay, awesome. That was a 12 and my true is +2, so okay.
All right, that's as good as you can get. So
awesome.
Each of you can tell a story of home as we go around. Now, you can also clear a named burden, which I know no one has yet. But as we're going around and telling stories, if there's a good moment for one of you to gaze into the distance and notice some fragment of loveliness in the landscape, you can name a burden and then use this move to also clear that as we go. So who would like to start by telling a story of home? And you'll notice that the stories of home are all listed in the Character Keeper on our Stories tab. So when you tell a story of home, You might pick one of the prompts like, when you first realized how little you were compared to the world beyond home. So tell me something that happened on your journey that, meant you realized that you were small. And then these don't have to be long stories. It can be a single evocative moment, or it can be kind of a little story with a beginning, middle, and an end. Would anyone like to lead off as you munch your road bread and leaf sandwiches?
I can. So my aunt always complained that I was spoiled, and I think like that's just basically false. Like, I didn't have it as tough as Tot did, but I was pretty reasonable. I started pulling my weight reasonably early. Like, I'm strong and hardy and out to help people, but she never really got it. We never saw eye to eye on like what I could and should be doing. And in particular, she was always complaining that food was so much more plentiful when I was growing up, and that I wouldn't last a day on the eating the way that she did when she was my age. And as I, sit here crowded with my companions, like munching on the stuff that can survive for the longest and watching it spread thin, I think, she doesn't, care in the least about immortals or the end of all things or whatever. But I wonder if she would respect a little bit how I've learned to survive.
Very good. Yeah. Who else has a story of home to share?
Yeah, I've got one. I mean, I remember my sandwiches being stolen by a terrible bully. So I think there's this prompt, a rival from home who's never gone on an adventure like this. And just in this very moment, I remember this bully, and he was known by the name of Noodles, and he would steal other children's food. And then when it was about finding the last member of the fellowship to complete it, I don't know how many people we started with, but when it was about to find really the last person, then I was the one to volunteer, not him, though I was way smaller, but I just felt it was in me, and everybody was thinking that Noodles would probably join the fellowship, but he just hid somewhere behind one of those stilt houses, and showing what kind of coward he was.
So is your character feeling, like you could bully Noodles now when you get home, or do you feel contemptuous of him, or have you, found a different kind of peace with him?
I think I don't know yet. I still can't imagine what it would feel like to see him again. Actually, I mean, I'm just remembering him, but it's so remote right now that I don't know myself.
Right. Violet or Autumn? What are you remembering about home?
I feel like I'm remembering that, we probably, we did when I was, because I think Violet helped take care of the kids, like if there's a group home or a place where lost kids are, kind of, whether they wander through or whether they grow up there, and she kind of helps with that. And I think, she grew up there and knows that like sandwiches kind of look a certain way when we make them there, and on the road, like we've seen a lot of different foods and stews, and people who don't eat things, they just eat magic, or they just like they just suck people's thoughts from them, and I think that she's just looking at this sort of poor imitation of the food back home and just trying to think of like how how wild it is that, you know, there are so many different ways, you know, when I would have just thought that like a sandwich is always a sandwich, but it isn't, you know, the way that we make our food back home is particular to us, even if it's incredibly ordinary.
Is there a food that Violet will miss not eating again when she goes home?
I think that there's probably she probably tried like one of those forest animals that live, you know, in a swamp. There's not a lot of a lot of scaly things, a lot of things that can survive in the water, but like having like a forest creature. Probably the first time, you know, I think somebody probably found a boar one time, one of the other soldiers, and it was a big party, it was a big roast, and it was just the most rich thing that she'd ever experienced, and was an entirely different food than she'd ever had back home.
Nice. Autumn, what about you? What do you remember under the shadow of this giant breastplate as it gets closer and closer to noon and all the shadows shrink?
Mechanics question, do I need to pick a different prompt than everyone who has gone before?
You are welcome to, and I would say lightly encouraged to, but as long as you feel like you have your own interpretation, you may reuse any story but a story of doom.
I think that I am thinking about the story that I will tell my family when I go home. Like, I think I was the youngest of the family and always considered a little, I don't know, leftover. And so as we're hunched under here, I'm harboring this ambition of going home and telling this fantastic story that will make everyone finally respect me.
Who in your family do you most want to tell the story, and how do you picture them reacting?
My oldest sister, and I think I'm torn. Like, I want to picture them reacting with praise and admiration, and I suspect they still won't listen to me. So I'm trying to craft the story that will make them listen.
All right. Well, it's high noon. You know, there's almost no shadow left under the breastplate. And as Violet knows, this is the moment where you are safest from the greater crows. Are you guys going to make a run for it? How do you plan to cross the battlefield?
I think so. We've been doing this a long time now, and I think while we're chatting in a lull between stories, I want to ask Autumn if she thinks the crows will listen to her, because I've seen what she can do. And I've seen what she can do, but I have no idea how it works. And so it's like a totally sincere, who knows question, but just like, by the way.
I think they're too far from nature. Like, they're not. If they were crows, I could probably ask, but they're not really just crows anymore.
That makes sense. Bird crows it is.
I think Violet would want to see if we can get like our cloaks around each other, do a kind of like moving boulder situation. She's not thrilled about like breaking up or going one at a time unless somebody, you know, wants to volunteer to just kind of like draw attention away, but is very, very not about breaking everybody up to do this.
I think if you guys want to use your cloaks to be a moving boulder, I'd probably believe that it's either a keen roll, you know, of how clever it is, or a true roll of you all wanting to be together and not parted, just depending on the mindset of the person who makes the roll.
I like the idea of a true roll, but that's me if I'm the one rolling.
Is your idea?
Anybody else? Okay.
I think go for it.
Okay. Ooh, boy. Okay. Well, let's see. So I have +2 to that. That is That is just the 6.
Just a 6. I see. Well, you guys start moving across as a boulder. But of course, being a big pile of cloaks makes it relatively hard to see where you're going or what you're doing. And you almost have like just a view of your feet and a little bit around it. So as you're walking, there's a lot of like muffled, like, oh, there's a big sword. Step over it. Step over it. Oh, it's an axe. Hang on. Go around. Go around. Go around. Go around. And it's just as you guys have carefully moved around what was just a little huddled mass, almost as though they were huddled together defending each other, just like you are in this moment, of dwarves all fallen in battle with their backs to each other facing outwards. As you're navigating around that one of your cloaks is plucked from you by a greater crow. And as it reveals you, 2 more swooping in with their claws, ready to tear. And Violet, I'd like you to take an additional burden, and you may name it as you like, but a burden of having suggested this to your friends and possibly, bringing them all here to their deaths.
I can intercept this, right?
You can use your move if you'd like to.
Gotta do it.
All right, go for it.
Danielle, this is your chance to veto, but
No, it's okay.
what's up? Okay. I can carry you. When a companion is about to take a burden, tell a story of the journey to interpose yourself or carry them bodily in order to keep them safe. And this burden is like non-trivially a spiritual one, right?
Yeah.
What's a good one? So I didn't fall in love with the forest the way that Violet did. It was fine. It actually, but it was kind of just like, what if home was dry? It's fine, but it's not special. What really spoke to me was the tundra. They have this thing that's like, it's like, what if rain was fluffy, I guess is how I would describe it. And like, it's cold, but we're hardy folks and we had lots of cloaks and there were fires, and the people around there knew how to like track down the fattiest, juiciest meats, the stuff that make the lean, gamey forest creatures, like I see why someone would like that, but give me a seal, man. And I think of everything, when I think about not making it all the way home, like that was just so different and so interesting. And it felt like there were so many stories there of a kind that I wouldn't even know how to tell. And it has always been Violet keeping us together, keeping the crew a crew, reminding me both that it's worth seeing home again and that I don't want to stop without the rest of the team. Does that count?
Yeah.
Woo.
I think. Well, I have to ask Violet also, do you feel like this is sheltering you from this burden?
Yeah. I think knowing that I've at other times my urging everybody has gone well, instead of just, sometimes when you get a group of people together, you don't always have the best idea, but being reminded that there are good things that can come from that, I think help her to not be distracted by that thought weighing on her.
All right.
So I'm rolling plus true.
You are.
Woo. That is an 8 plus 2 is an even 10. We take those.
All right. So on a 10 plus, you avert the consequences entirely. How is it just between the two of you that it's clear that neither of you will take on a burden from this moment, even though you are still in physical peril?
But that's the thing, right? Is that we've done a bunch of that. Like that's a problem, and we'll see how that goes. But what was at stake here was the group and our unity, and it's like important that one of our dumb ideas didn't work out isn't like something that was contingent on not. Like we're good, man.
Yeah, I think if we're still kind of all huddled under there and this is being ripped back, I think I would look over at him and just kind of like be like, oh, like kind of like the oh shoot, oh no. And if I saw that he also looked scared and panicked, that would be very bad. But like if he just kind of looks prepared, like, yeah, we're gonna do this, I think that will prevent that kind of total panic.
All right. So yeah, you're going to do this just like you have before. What is it exactly you all are going to do, you band of small people in the face of 3 greater crows, greater than you've ever seen them? And I will remind you that your peril moves of run and hide are options even when the hunters are not there, as long as you are facing a terrible threat.
But if we're facing a terrible threat that's not the hunters, our other moves are also still on the table?
Yes.
That's where we're at? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Let's see.
Oh, like negotiate an obstacle or...
Yep.
Okay.
And certainly, Autumn, I know you don't think it will work to approach them, but if you feel like this is the moment you have to risk it, it's up to you. What's Tot's first instinct as these crows peel back your semi-disguise as a boulder?
Actually, it's not to blame anyone. I think, as Brian pointed out, our fellowship is past that. Yeah, blaming each other doesn't really help. So his first instinct is actually to run, but he knows that Violet is a little on the slow side. So, guessing from the Swift rating, so he's the moment he runs, he's actually trying to attract attention from the crowds to give Violet a chance to make a dash, because he knows he could outrun them maybe, but it's time. It's
excellent. And when you run, you name who you most want to protect, and it sounds like that's Violet. And roll plus Swift.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And that's including with your. Okay.
Yes, it's including the bonus. Yes. It's, yeah.
Gonna be fun.
Sorry.
Gonna be fun.
Well, on a miss, you do get away, Philip. I think as you go, one of the crows starts streaking after you. How is it you wind up evading it?
I let go of my cloak, obviously. I mean, we've lost one already, so why bother with mine? And yes, I'm shouting to Violet to start running, but I can't even see what's going on because it's such a wild fight with a crow next to me. Yeah,
as the 3 of you are left there, possibly trying to run after Tot, who's found his way to. What kind of shelter have you found now, Tot?
So actually, on the edge of the battlefield, there are these large catapults, and I just snuck under one of them after running for a quarter mile or so.
Excellent. Tot is sitting snugly under a catapult, and here in the heat of the noonday sun, you suddenly notice, Autumn, that the little white flowers are a lot whiter and a lot sparklier than they were before. They're covered with a thin rime of frost. And the whole field is now a little cold, and your breaths are coming in little puffs of steam. And Autumn, you hear that oldest sister of yours, saying, Autumn, you're not coming back, are you? Is this the end of your story? I'm almost satisfied with that. And Violet, you hear the footfalls that you've heard before, but closer than you've ever heard them, because the hunters have arrived, and even the crows are backing up, knowing that they won't have to do any work for this prey. In the middle of the high noon, suddenly it's cold, and a shadow where no shadow should be is falling across you. What do you do? And to be clear, when the hunters are here, only the peril moves are really in play.
Danielle, do you know you're muted?
There we go. There we go. I think especially seeing Tot take off and feeling her cloak go and then seeing what's happened, Violet is going to hide. It's going to look for the best place to hide. Come on, work with me here. Okay. Awesome. That's a 12. That's an 11 plus 1.
All right.
We're
So tell me about where you're
So-
hiding as the hunters come and why you think it might protect you against them.
Is there any more gigantic armor about? Or there's still, you said the dwarves are still, like, there are bodies on the fields. I think that her move would be to kind of run, to kind of fling herself under to the side of the biggest pile, probably where a few of them fell at the same time, to kind of wedge under them and kind of pull one over her.
All right. And you also, since you have a 10 plus, you can unlock another option from the Stories of Doom.
Yes.
So would you like to tell me what you'd like to be an option for folks going forward here?
Oh, so this is unlocking it for everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I want the wounded and left for dead, but somebody brings you back from the brink.
A very good choice. I will mark that as unlocked on our character keeper.
Yay.
It's now an option, which is relevant since 2 of you are still not in any kind of place of safety, but you also get to overhear something important. I think we'll take our first break coming up, but Violet, if you would tell me a little bit about a question that's uppermost on Violet's mind, and I'll tell you the answer to it when we come back, and we'll see if that helps Conrold and Autumn escape.
Yes, I think her question is about these elemental powers. If there's, like, how they either, like, what the source is that they're drawing from, or if they can only, like, use one element at a time, kind of a thing. So because she's kind of seen them from a distance, but is really, really curious about kind of what the source of their power is and how long it lasts.
All right, excellent. I will give you something to think about on that when we come back. Let's come back at 7 after the hour. So in whatever time zone you are, 7 after the hour, go ahead and take a break, and then we'll see whether Autumn and Conrold can escape the hunters and whether what Violet's learned will help. See you soon.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
All right. As we return, I'm just going to answer a few rules questions for a second. For evocative details, you can reuse one if you choose to use them. And on the list of evocative details, if you weave it into a story, you can take advantage on the roll. There's a series of just very strongly worded ideas, and you're always welcome to pull one in. For example, a flower blooming foully with its roots in a pool of ichor. If you like that, put it in your story and take advantage on whatever story role you're doing. For stories of doom, you can reuse them, but you should try to just only reuse an evocative detail if you think you're using it either in a different way than someone else has, or if you're adding a new perspective on what someone else has told. And that's pretty much the same for all the stories, except the stories of doom, you can only use once, and they're used up. It's very relevant to people right now. And they refer to what's happening right now. So they're describing how this encounter with the hunters goes, because it's the story of your desperate stand. So with that being said, and Philip, if you do need to head out early, don't worry about it. It's an open door. Anyone can step away for any reason. But do let us know if you want a second to narrate just a dramatic scene of why we're not seeing your person for a little bit before you go. But speaking of dramatic scenes, we left Violet huddled under a pile of dwarf corpses. And it just gets so cold where you are that it feels like you're shivering so hard that you're rattling the armor and you're sure you'll be spotted. But as one of the hunters, you can just see little bits of them in their cloak through kind of the tangled limbs and swords and armor around you, draws near you. It's the coldest you've ever felt in your life. But with every step the hunter takes away, the safer and warmer you feel. And then you notice that another hunter has been standing close to the corpses the whole time. So I think the answer to your question about the elements is that you can tell that one hunter in particular is doing the cold. And perhaps if they needed a different element, a different hunter would be handling that. Does that work for you?
Yeah, that's okay, good.
And those two hunters are facing down or moving towards Conrold and Autumn. Your options are run, hide, make a desperate stand. You cannot stay on the field with the hunters. What do you do?
I think I'm going to try to hide.
All right. Where are you going to go?
So, not part of the dwarf corpse pile, but nearby there is just a giant skull from some sort of riding beast. And I think that I can just get under it.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's ask the dice if you can do it.
7 and 8.
All right. Yeah, we'll come back to you in 1 second to see what you find in that skull. And Conrold, what are you going to do?
Oh boy. I think I might run. I think I'm on the bigger side for our people, at least. And I definitely am not, I've taken what measures I can to be able to sneak effectively, but I'm not feeling good about that right now. So I think I'm just going to fucking take off. So who do I most want to protect? Does that... I think I'm most worried about Autumn. Sorry. But that's an 8. So I don't know. Good luck, everyone.
All right, tell me a little about where you're running to, and your running will benefit Autumn no matter what.
Yeah, no. So I think what I am counting on is being able to mount a distraction. I think there are like almost kind of they in this view of the battlefield, they seem sort of out of place, but you can almost imagine how they could have been useful. These like giant towering siege machines. Like I can't even see any walls. I have no idea what context like made this relevant, but I imagine they were. There was something that some clever plan brought these in. And there are a few of them and they look rickety. The metal still has that sort of like unnatural shine, but the wood has rotted through. And I think what I want to do is sort of like blow past these and see if I can trigger some kind of a domino effect. I don't think I can hurt a hunter, but I might be able to confuse it a little bit.
I see. Well, tell me a little what that looks like. I think, it's enough that they're going to be thinking of something besides you at the moment.
Yeah. So I think that, so as I run past, I've got maybe my largest dagger in my hand, and I am sort of like chopping at them. And from like for like the movie audience perspective, you see it looks like nothing's happening. But I am taking pretty good guesses at the structure. And when I get to the last one, I do like a full shoulder tackle into it. And you see them, they start to go down and they go in different directions. And there's this question of like, is it even possible to trace where the first one was if you weren't specifically watching them? And there's just this array of like splintering wood and clattering metal and like probably corpses being strewn and who knows what else.
Yeah, and Autumn, this must be very confusing for Autumn to hear in the darkness under the skull. But you really have two problems at this point. There's something crazy going on out there that you have to hope is your friends not dying at the hands of the hunter. And there's someone dangerous in here. Under the skull, also seeking shelter, is an elf woman whose legs appear to have been crushed in the battle, who's been stuck under here. She looks kind of, she's much bigger than you. She looks hungry. And she's got what you recognize from your journey in the bandage tied over her eyes. She's one of the blind archers of Haleth, who are fearsome warriors. But somehow she's been left for dead in this battle. And she can't see you, but she's, pulled out a dagger and says, like, who are you and what have you come here for?
No one important, and I'm hiding from the crows.
Are you with a larger party? Do you have horses, some way to carry me out of here?
No, just my own feet.
Yeah, I think for the moment the danger of the hunters is past, so you guys can gradually reconvene, however you like, peeping out little by little out of your shelters as you've done so many times before. Autumn, what do you say to your companions, and what do you say to this blind archer now that you found her? What are you all going to do?
So I have good news and bad news. There's a lady under the skull. A person. I forget. Elf gender is confusing.
Okay.
They look injured, like immobilized injured. But I don't feel good leaving them.
Yeah.
Does anyone know anything about elves? Or blind archers?
I'm trying to think. Do we?
I will say this might be a moment as you ask for all of us kind of what we know about elves and about the blind archers of Haleth. If anyone wants to, you're welcome to gaze into the distance and name a burden if you have a burden. It turns out related to elves or the blind archers of Haleth.
Interesting. I have a move for this, I think, that is not that, but have been talking a lot, so I'm happy to let somebody else go if somebody else has a thing and I just talk slightly faster. All right, screw it. I am uncomfortable leaving this person. That, like, it might be tough and they might be a burden, but we got where we got because of a lot of hospitality and a lot of forgiveness. And I can't just let that go. And so I think what I'm doing in the process of digging this person out of the skull and sort of helping get them mobile with us is negotiating an obstacle with True. What do you think?
Yeah, I believe that. Tell me about what you're doing here.
So this is a story of a journey, right? I want this to go well. Give me a sec. So our swamp isn't the only swamp we passed on our journey. We went through another one. And it was weird because it was at times the most familiar of any of the lands we crossed and the most utterly foreign. Because the folks who lived there weren't tiny people like us. They were elves. They probably weren't these elves, but they're more like these elves than we are, for sure. More like these elves than they were like us. And we showed up there, beaten and bedraggled from some sort of a minor conflict with some sort of an obstacle. And they looked at us and were immediately like, okay, you can crash here. That's fine. Just no questions asked, took us in. And that felt like the sort of thing that I felt like I needed to repay to anyone, but especially to elves. But they were so weird. The set of things that they value are totally different. The way that they think about things are totally different. And so we're in this swamp, and we're going around and feasting and patching up and helping them a little bit, but mostly just healing and sitting. And we start to notice just glimpses of sparkle from the mud. And you notice it over and over again. The first day you're like, that's a trick of the light. But man, I've spent a bunch of time in swamps. I know what a trick of the light looks like. That's gold down there. And one day I we'd been there for 2 or 3 days, and I was just, I've got to go after this. And it was gold. And they were disgusted with me. Just absolutely disgusted with me. It was gold. It's not like they don't value gold the same way that we do. They trade. They know what gold is good for, but they're so proper and so finicky. The idea of debasing yourself to go down there and pick up literally a piece of gold sitting right there, like a 1/4 inch below the mud, just was extremely off-putting to them. And I got pulled off, and it felt like I was actually risking our hospitality for who knows how much gold they've just let linger there over the years because none of them have the stomach to go pick it up. We live in a swamp. So I think that's an evocative detail, and I think that is
Broke a taboo.
Yeah, that's it. Sorry, I can't find it in the list anymore. How you broke a taboo of a strange host who had sheltered you. What do you think?
It certainly is. Yes, roll with advantage.
All right. I did not need that advantage. And that is an 11.
Very good. So you can remember and name one of your burdens as you recall how you've grown since the last time you faced a similar obstacle. But tell me a little bit about how you guys bring her out of the skull and in what way you carry her off the battlefield here.
I think that a thing that I didn't realize about the elves, even having spent a little bit of time with them, is they just don't weigh very much. They just don't weigh very much. They're much larger than we are, but they might as well be birds. Like, maybe their bones are literally hollow. Maybe that's why they crush so easily. Like I've carried children that gave me more trouble, and so I think my plan is to do a fireman's carry and hope that they heal. I'm under the impression they're good at that. I don't really know what that looks like, but I'm just gonna carry it for a while, see how it goes. I think the last time I tried to offer hospitality to a hurt person of intelligence was on our way there, and it was another kind of creature entirely, something that was vaguely our shape but a very different size with some odd features, and I couldn't stop myself from getting frustrated at the difficulty of communicating, and just eventually the whole thing where I had set out to help them devolved into useless yelling until we ended up walking away and mentally wishing them well. And I think I carry that, right? That my temper might well have stopped us from saving someone.
Are you gazing into the distance?
What?
Are you gazing into the distance and revealing a burden? I missed that.
He gets to just name a burden, period, because he rolled a 10+ on negotiate an obstacle.
What's up? So I am putting down burden tantrum.
Very good. All right. As you guys carry this very light elf off the battlefield, I wonder if one of you might want to chart a course to try and continue home. And Todd, would you like to do it?
Yes. I mean, Todd has a special way to do it. I mean, this creature that was so appalled when Conrold shouted at him. He left one thing behind, and that was this strange dead branch. And for some reason, Todd took it with him, not realizing what it really was. Maybe still not realizing what it really is, but it has this strange feature that it keeps blooming or growing when Todd most urgently needs it. And the course is kind of obvious to get away from this battlefield. Essentially, keep walking. But the trouble is obviously the elven person, and he holds this stick to their leg, and then the thing starts growing as it always does when Todd most needs it, and it forms a kind of bandage around their legs so that she can actually try and walk with us. So that's the way he tries to chart the course.
All right, go ahead and roll plus keen, and you may also tell a story of the journey as you go.
Actually, that's my bad stat, but I will give my best.
I will note that if he wanted to tell us that he just told the story of the gift he was given and how he exhausted it.
Yeah,
by God.
That's pretty fair, yeah.
Yes, that's the story of the journey, obviously. Yeah. I've got an 8 -1 for the keen, so it's a 7, so I barely make it.
But you do, in fact, make it. All right.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are leaving the battlefield, and you've come to the frozen maw of the earth. So, you knew you'd have to pass back this way on the way home, though it may be particularly uncomfortable after your recent run-in with the hunter. It's hard not to look over your shoulder to make sure that this coldness isn't from them. But as you reach the frozen maw of the earth, can you tell me, Autumn, what is trying to escape from the gullet of the maw?
Something vaguely deer-shaped?
The size of a deer, or deer-shaped but not deer size?
Deer-sized, deer-shaped, but glowy? Sort of shimmery more than glowy. Like, it's hard to look at them exactly.
All right. And as you've traveled along, your blind archer, has thanked you for helping her get this far. If you can just get her past the frozen maw of the earth, she should be able to reach the river that will lead her back to her people. But she does need your help getting through here. Yeah, so the whole landscape is like almost as though it was in the process, the whole earth of being twisted and drawn down and halted in that moment. It's flecked with snow and ice, and in the heart of that twisting awfulness is a glowing deer kind of struggling, as though, whichever one of you has worked on a farm has seen things being born, that kind of scrabbling. It's nearly out. What do you do?
I feel like this is an Autumn question.
Well, if you want, have your character ask her.
Yeah, I think that's I sort of like I might be like overly inclined to typecast people, but such is life. Like, I definitely see like weird animal thing and immediately look to Autumn and like, is it friend or foe? Do we owe it something?
I think that I know that it's a friend. I think I know that it was something possibly even that froze this, like was in... It is trying to get back out of the earth. It wasn't initially like from the earth. So it's friend, and we should probably help it. I think I know that if not its race was instrumental in some important part of the battle. And so yes, we should help it. I'm not 100% certain how, but we should.
Do any of your companions have an idea of how to help this, this glowing deer that's struggling to be born out of the earth again, but seems to be stuck? Violet or Tot, what do you do?
And I think that I can communicate, like, if we can come up with a plan, I can communicate it to the deer, but I think it's going to be entirely one way. Like, I can tell the deer something and the deer will understand, but the deer's not going to be able to share its thoughts with me.
Fair enough.
Todd doesn't feel very qualified to.
I think as you're
to do.
Oh, go ahead, Violet.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, I think she is just like, well, when kids get stuck on the playground, getting into and out of logs, we, like you said, it seems to be stuck in some kind of earth. Like, are there branches that we can either pull on, or do we have any kind of oil or something? Does somebody have like an oil that we can just put on it to make it greasier to come out? It's not exactly she doesn't really have any esoteric ways to get this very mythical, wonderful deer out, but maybe, if you treat it like like a toddler, maybe we can either pry it, like make the opening bigger or make the deer slipperier.
Yeah, if one of you wants to tell me about, where you've gotten an oil or slippening agent, you're welcome to try and negotiate an obstacle and pull the deer free.
I think she would probably look at Tot because he seems to have a knack to pick up the weirdest stuff and like always have like trinkets and things, and sometimes they're
Yeah,
useful.
I'm not a burglar, but I could definitely give it a try. I mean, I really have fond memories of the forest, yeah, of the deer, and obviously this pork meat has lots of fat and lots of lardy fat, and it could well be that there is some left in my pocket, but it could well be we've eaten it by now, so I'm actually not sure, but yeah, I can try and overcome this obstacle. I mean, I'm not sure if I want to rob this giant deer. I mean, it's huge, yeah, compared to us. But
Yeah,
at least I will give it a try to find it in my pockets.
And let me ask you, for the last of the kind of lard that you had, were you saving it for something on this journey? That wasn't a glowing deer?
Actually, yes. As I mentioned, so the burnt oats, they were quite poor. So that is something to bring home for Harvest Festival.
Mm.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So which stat feels right about this as you sacrifice your lard for this deer?
True. I would guess.
All right, I believe you.
Yeah. Okay, so let's roll. Oh yes, it's an 11.
Excellent. All right. Well, you solved the problem handily. Will all of you tell me a little about what it looks like as you free this deer from the maw and how it reacts? And Tot, you can remember and name one of your burdens as you recall how you've grown since the last time you faced a problem.
Yeah, I think the old Tot that left our village on stilts would never have imagined approaching such a huge creature, but all these experiences from this long journey have changed him, and he's now courageous enough to just look into its eyes and tell apart whether that's aggression or fear in the deer's eyes, and he realizes it's fear, and it's primal fear, and he knows he has to be cautious, but when Autumn calms the beast, he's approaching it and starts really to rub it, and his hands get colder and colder, reminding him of what just happened back on the battlefield when the little flowers bloomed again so cold. But he knows it's a different type of cold. It's a natural maw, so he's less worried. But smelling the remainder of the lard, he's sad because he can't give it back to his grand aunt back home. So that's gone, but we will see what comes out of this. Yeah.
And what name do you want to give to your burden here?
So my I think my burden is I once stole a big pie from the last Harvest Festival. Never admitted I did that. So I really want to bring something home to make up for that. So I think it's theft or something like that. Yeah, theft works, I guess.
All right. And now let me ask, as the deer comes free, what do you all want from the deer? And I particularly ask you, Autumn, who has the best chance of communicating with it. The deer kind of, even though it's a full-grown deer, it has that shaky fondness as it looks around on the world as though it's been away for quite some time, trapped however it was. And it looks at you, Autumn, with a bit of confusion in its eye, though it's still relieved and glistening both with lard and with that strange glowing power. What do you do?
I think I want to find out what it needs. Like, I don't think that we're done rescuing it.
All right. I'm going to stop my camera for a second as the baby back there
Hi, baby.
comes to join us to eat. Yeah, tell me, Autumn, how you want to figure this out.
I am looking at my move.
All right, 1 second. Were you naming the deer, or is that the name of the? Oops. Yeah, I think your move is a great fit here.
Okay. So I think that I am trying to tell it about where I think it comes from. I think that was the place that I was most tempted to stay. I didn't see the deer specifically, but it's very evocative of a place that we walked through on our way here. And so I'm going to try to communicate with the deer that we want to help it, but we don't know how. And I know that it can't tell us what it needs, but if it can communicate with us in impressions or movements or anything, we will help it.
All right. So just tell me a little about that space where you were most tempted to stay. What was it like?
It was cold and cozy. Instead of stilts, all of the houses were mostly underground and warm, and there were fires everywhere, and there were grazing beasts all over the place. Not deer, but cow-like things that had the same sort of light that the deer has. And they were obviously a domesticated version of something else. And so I kind of suspect that place that I wanted to stay, that I really enjoy the cold. It's new and different, but I also don't like being cold. And so this place where I could have the cold and be warm was someplace that I really wanted to stay.
Excellent. All right. Well, please go ahead and roll plus true.
Let's see. 10 plus 1, 11.
Oh, excellent. All right. Well, on your move, the creature acts as you wish. So, I think what happens is as you tell the deer that you want to help it, but you need it to show you how. It looks at you kind of stamps its foot for a moment as though hoping to reply, and then cocks its head sideways. And then that bird song you've been hearing this whole time takes up again. And the deer can clearly hear it too, and you know somehow that what the gap that you could not bridge, not even with your connection to animals, this bird is helping you with. And that the deer, which has been locked away for so long, needs someone to know its name and to greet it by name. And it's been locked away, and it's been, it knows somehow, just even emerging, that many of the people who knew it have fallen in this war. But it wants you to either find its name or find someone who knows its name, and just to say, welcome back to the deer.
I think the bird song reminds me of some sort of festivity song. And out of game, I can't think of a clever name for the deer just yet, but I think there was a song we sang, and it was about a deer come out of the woods. And I need some help here. Does anyone have any ideas about whatever Homeland song we had?
I'm terrible at this. I used a pre-gen for my own name.
Something more or less unrelated, but why does this deer appear here? I think it's because of the fabric of reality still needs mending. Yeah, because of this whole war thing kind of mixed up things, and now this forest creature steps out of this frozen gullet, and that's maybe the way to approach the song.
like a song of the mending mending the fabric, or yeah. Let's see. I can. I mean, I have the move that involves poems and parables, but if you just need, if you're mentioning Autumn, like, oh, what was that song that we sang that was about the deer? If we're just trying to remember.
Oh, I think you should use your move since we, Autumn said she needs a song here.
Yeah. I think Violet is trying to remember and is like, oh right, yes, that was one that we heard on the journey, but it was set to a tune that was familiar to us back home in the swamp, but they used different words to it because we weren't singing so much about deers in the woods, but there was one for children that was about the frogs sitting on the edge, on the little mounds of grass, and it was about the frogs coming out and sitting together, and they were all being reunited as a family. And then when we heard this song in a camp here, it was about the deer coming out of the woods to be reunited with its family, a similar theme, but an entirely different topic. And I think she just nods and is trying to remember the words to it and kind of sings a little bit of the song as she's remembering it, hoping that by the time we get to the part with the name, she'll remember what the name was.
Excellent. And is the original frog song a counting song for children? Because that kind of sounds like it's normally a counting song as all the frogs come out.
Yeah, it's like a counting song / lullaby, kind of a one of those songs that give children something to do when they're trying to go to sleep and not going to sleep.
If you're very lucky, the baby falls asleep before you get to the sixth frog.
Yeah, very, very much. That's the kind of vibe. But that's why it was odd to hear all of these like grizzled warriors singing this song with the same tune. She was like, okay. But it's a very noble song. So I'll roll true. Whoop! I dropped it. Let me grab the dice. Dropped it on the. All right. Ooh, yay. Okay, so that is an 11 plus 2. Yay!
That's an enormous hit. Why don't you read out for us what happens on a big hit here?
Okay, on a hit, everyone listening can clear a named burden, and the first companion to take heart and sally forth rolls with advantage. It's when you share a poem or parable to raise your companion's spirits. So I think she is singing and gets to the part with the name and is like Valora the deer is the name that she remembers in the song, and it's about how, just like the seasons, the deer comes forth to bring kind of the hope and the courage to the ones who are left.
Excellent. And as you get to that line, Valora the deer, that wobbly fawnishness of the deer is gone. It steps confidently, and that glow you saw, kind of without it almost feeling like a shift. It's almost as though it was this way the whole time, just permeates the ground. Every bit of the snow is glowing too. And that just the maw is still there. The ground is still twisted and bent, but there's a moment where you almost feel the ground sigh and relax for a second. Even though it's still distorted, there was a moment of rest for it at the moment the name was called out. Now, because that was such a big hit, anyone listening to this song can clear a named burden. I think 2 of you have named burdens at this point. So let me know if you'd like to clear one,
Yep.
Tot or Conrold, and why this song helps you do it.
So much of what I was torn up about before was my frustration at the difficulty of communicating. And like, this is like the orc or whatever and I like shared a little bit of language. Like, this is like a totally foreign thing that like, you know, Autumn can barely communicate with. Like, and we did it. We set out to help it and we helped it. And I like still feel a little bit of hurt and regret, but it doesn't define me in the same way. I know that I can do better, even if the damage has been done. Is that
Excellent.
how that's supposed to play? I'm not actually sure what.
Yeah, that works. You know, it's up to you how you clear it, as long as you feel like your character has really reckoned with this burden and in some way isn't going to be defined by or constrained by it in the same way that you found a measure of peace.
Yeah, for Todd, I believe he realizes how naive it was to carry a pot of lard like halfway around the world to amend for something, and being reunited with the family. What this children's song is about is actually way more important than bringing something back home. Yeah, coming home in one piece is the goal here. Yeah, so I think that's when he realizes that it was a silly thing to begin with. Yeah,
that's very charming. All right, I think we're getting close to charting a course to leave the frozen maw, but I want to ask if anyone does want to take time to gaze into the distance and name a burden they haven't named at this point.
I think that because we're at the river and we're where the elf is about to.
Yeah, as you cross over the great hill of the maw, you're definitely nearing the river where she feels like she'll be able to, you know, find people there and be able to be taken home.
And does this always just have to be about the landscape? Like, can Violet ask a question of the elf that could be related to this?
Go for it. Let's see.
Yeah, I think before she leaves, Violet wants to ask who she met while she was out, and wants to know if she'd seen anybody else like us, maybe a little smaller, maybe a little younger, probably didn't have really great armor or anything like that. I think she wants to know if she ran into one of the kids at the place where she was before, who asked her about this big war, you know, was, you know, this terrible thing that was going to happen, and they need people. And I think Violet reassured, you know, was it going to be like was it defeatable, all these things? And to try and reassure him, Violet said, you know, yeah, of course we can, you know, of course this can be defeated, and you know, of course the good guys are going to prevail. And didn't realize then that like the next day there was just a note on his little bedroll that he was going to go out and help this be defeated. And hearing about how deadly and fatal it was, I think she's always carried that burden that she basically sent the oldest kid in her charge, probably like Fenric, I think his name is, and sent him out on this thing, and hasn't seen him, doesn't know where he is, if he survived at all.
Yeah, I think you know, the elf maiden kind of, as you're telling her all this, like inclines her head a little and goes like, I didn't see him myself, but I know there was a strange small boy who passed through our lands and wished to become a dedicate, and she gestures to her bandage, you know. He was so small. It takes great training and faith and patience and vigils to be allowed to give up your eyes to truly see. You know, he was too small to do it. I think he consented to become some kind of groom in my father's stables, but I was called up to the war, so I don't know what became of him.
My goodness. Okay. Where are your father's stables? You said down the river?
Yes, you know, my people are down the river, you know, just through the labyrinthian canyons, but the river should take me safely home.
Okay. Good. No, I think she just kind of looks back at the group because I assume home is the other direction.
I think it's the longer way home. So you guys could travel with her a little further if you want to ask your companions to do this.
Yeah.
Or you could take the easier route home simply through the Toadstool Forest.
I think that Violet shares this information with everybody else and is like, there is a you know, Fenric, the tall, skinny kid that was always, you know, helping bringing like the wood in. I think he's here. I think he's working at this elf at her father's stables. And I think I sent him out. Is it okay if we take this route back? Is there something that, you know, we can get there that will make it worth everybody's while, or something that you guys want? I know that any time we're on the road is dangerous. So if you can't, you know, or if you don't want to, I understand.
So I will both want to name a burden and to ask you a question about this.
Yeah. Yeah,
Do
Violet,
we
can you
know-
name your burden at this point? Is it just Fenric, or do you want to give a different name to it?
Oh, I think, well, it's Fenric, but I think in her mind it's like carelessness / neglect for letting somebody just go, like not realizing what she was doing.
Right. And yeah, Autumn, you want to ask a question and possibly gaze into the distance and name a burden yourself?
So apologies, I got distracted by the puppy for a moment. Are we checking on Fenric, or do you think Fenric needs saving from something, or is this Fenric's own adventure?
It might be his own adventure, but like he didn't. I think she doesn't know if he is fully safe in this place of giant, large people. Like he might. It sounds better than being like, oh yeah, we saw him headed towards this giant place that's on fire. But I think that that she's not gonna feel like he is safe until she can double check.
I think my character is unusually sensitive to the idea of being rescued from things you don't need to be rescued from as a youngest child. But I am also still having some feels about the deer. And so I think I would like to gaze into the distance.
Yeah, what does your gaze light upon in the landscape? At this point, okay. Yeah.
It's not the bird that was singing. I've never seen the bird that was singing. But something about that bird reminds me of someone I couldn't help. Someone that was just a little too alien to me to be able to communicate with. And so communicating with this deer brings back the memory of this beautiful bird-like creature that I could not help in any way. And so I'm still feeling like maybe I'm not good enough at the things that I do, so I think I'm carrying around some sort of lack of confidence.
All right. And is that the name for your burden, a lack of confidence?
Yes, let's go with that.
All right. So are you decided one way or the other as a group? Will you travel down the river through the labyrinthian canyons to check on Fenric, or will you travel immediately home through the Toadstool Forest?
Todd doesn't say so, but he's a bit reluctant to rescue Noodle's little brother, Fenric. Yeah? But he doesn't mention that.
Conrold is sort of the opposite, which is that he doesn't want to volunteer the crew to danger because he has his strongest obligation to the crew, but he doesn't feel good walking away from anyone he could be leaving in harm. So he also does his best to stay quiet, but would vote in the opposite direction if someone forced him to.
All right, so Violet, I think it's up to you, since I, as the GM, can't tell what you're deciding, to force the issue in some way.
I think that she basically pulls out like a something from home and has like a little pendant thing that was attached to the note that he left when he ran off. And I think she's like, if I can just get this to him, if he's safe and fine, then that's great. I'll send him out with my blessing. But he's like, he was probably, whatever our version of like 18 is, like a little bit shy of that. And like we all would think of him as like a younger teen. And so I think it's probably like a little protection amulet kind of a deal. And I think that Violet's like, if I could just get this to him, I would feel less like, he went off because I did that, because I said it was fine, and it's very not fine, and it's still not fine. And if it's dangerous for us to go there, then it was dangerous for him to go there. So I could take on the burden of forcing the issue and being again like, all right, let's go do this thing, knowing that I could be endangering the crew to do that. So I can write that down as like probably, I don't know, mother hen. that might be the name of the bird.
I think wait to take that one as a named burden until you get the opportunity to with a move, but keep in mind, unless you're taking it as an additional burden, not filling up one of your slots just as a new burden as you ask for this, because then that's fine. You can always just add a named burden in addition to your slots.
Yeah.
Which would you like to do?
I think that would be the new one. I would just add that.
All right. I'm adding it on our character keeper so everyone else can see it, but yeah, a new burden of being a mother hen.
Okay, that's enough for me. I will change my silent vote to an active vote.
All right, Tot and Autumn, how do you react to this?
I will ask Violet for assurances that if Fenric doesn't want to come home, he doesn't have to. And as long as I can get that reassurance, I'm willing to go along with it.
What do you say, Violet?
Yeah, I say I understand. Yeah, I understand if he is on this adventure, that's fine. This is less about making him go anywhere and more about just making sure he has the best things that he needs for that.
So we've heard Todd's story about Noodles, right? Like I think I lean into that, right? Because I because I'm from this community and I've heard that story. Noodles is a dick, man. Like whatever. But I am gonna needle at Tot's vices here. Be like, imagine the look on Noodles' face when he learns that we saved his little brother.
But then he would have to live with the Noodles again, wouldn't he? That would be terrible for Fenric.
We've all grown.
That's true. Fenric must be way older by now. Maybe he even has a beard.
Violet's face at the idea of Fenric with a beard is just like fully just tragic.
All right.
I'm laughing though. Conrold gets it.
Then it sounds like you guys are heading off through the Elf Kingdom to get home to check on Fenric. Let's take another break here, and when we come back, you guys can decide whether you want to start by charting a course or if you want to share a meal before you get onto the river.
What could go wrong?
Let's be back here at 10 after, if that works for everyone.
Woo!
All right, see you soon. All right, looks like we're just up.
Sorry.
There we go.
Feel free to yell. I'm often just in another tab.
I was about to, but looks like even my quietest voice counted as yelling there.
Sorry.
All right, so we left our party on the banks of the river that leads into the labyrinthian canyons with your traveling companion, the blind archer, and ready to travel through her homeland to find Fenric and see if he needs to be brought home or just, lightly encouraged in what he's doing. There's a little town on the river. There's certainly an inn you can stay at that night. Do you want to keep on pressing forward, or do you want to pause to share a meal before you go?
Share a meal.
All right. Do you want to do the preparing of the food? Now, obviously, at an inn, you can have the food they're serving, but if there's anything you're bringing to it that's special. Or any way you have for your friends to help navigate the too large silverware and plates.
I can roll, or does somebody? I mean, I think.
Ditto. Like, I can do this, but if someone else wants to do it, they totally can.
All right.
No. Go ahead. Go ahead, Brian. You got it.
Okay. So Story of Home. Wait, no. Story of Home is what other people do. Do I do something?
You tell me about how you're
trying to meal. Rations.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So this is a little riverside community. I think they get a lot right, but that one of the things is that their food is vastly undersalted. Not just compared to what we've been eating on the road, but even compared to what we had at home. Is that this is just like a fresher place with like fresher things, and they just like aren't quite able to nail our home palate. And I think I sit down with the cook in advance of the meal and like make him some kind of a bet that like, look, like try your soup the way that you'd make it and try it with like 3 times as much salt and serve it to someone of your choosing and ask them to pick. And I won, and we ended up with a vastly saltier meal, to everyone's great pleasure. I think that lots of the items they will change back, but I think I've actually converted them on the soup.
Excellent. All right, as you sip your properly salted soup, go ahead and make that roll.
Rolling plus true. That is an 11. What's up?
Very good. All right. Everyone at the table can tell a story of home if they'd like to. And if you do, you can clear a named burden. And you do not have to, but you all have the option.
Is this a point at which folks can sneak in gazing into the distance?
Sure, as long as you tell me what you're gazing at.
Sure. I think the windows are less of a thing at home, sort of in general, just because there's not a lot to see, and because structural integrity is really important in like such a damp place. And so whenever I'm eating somewhere with like a number of prominent windows, my eyes are always drawn. And I think I look out and I look out on the trees and see like a patch that are very regular. They're not wild, they're cared for. That these are people who have learned to live with their landscape and who don't take wood randomly, but who have built some kind of a grove for it. And they're clearly logging here. And that like little piece of order and big piece of responsibility weighs on me, right? I think about what I left behind undone. That I think about I had promised someone that I was going to help shore up their home. I think that they were a little bit worried about their stilts, and things happen, like people rebuild when they have to, but that I'm a tough guy and a handyman and a helper, and said I was going to be there for that. And it just didn't happen because I got whisked away on our extremely important journey. And so I think I think I carry with me the burden of jobs undone.
All right. I go ahead and put that in. Now, does anyone want to tell a story of home and clear one of the burdens they have named?
Yes. I think that, let me make sure that am I staring into the distance? Is that the thing that I'm doing?
No, because that was
telling?
10 plus on sharing a meal. You just get to tell a story of home and clear a burden.
There is someone that I want to go back to at home. She's not quite my girlfriend, but if I hadn't left, she would be. And she loves other places' foods. We don't get a lot of it at home. It's usually only if a trader comes through and has some weird cookie or something. But something about this meal that would be, maybe it's salad. We're having salad, and salad is not a swamp thing. And so I'm thinking very fondly of her as I'm eating tomatoes or something.
Excellent. And what burden are you clearing?
I'm clearing my lack of confidence, because thinking about her and thinking about good things that I've done at home and good things that we have yet to do is making me feel a little more centered.
Very good. Does anyone else want to tell a story of home or clear a named burden?
I think that as we're eating, Violet is like, I may not be able to, she's kind of feels bad that, Tot had to use the last of his lard for everything, and now we're going on this other thing. And the taste of the soup and the salad kind of reminds her especially Conrold going out of his way to make sure that it's salted and everything in a proper way. She's like, what would really go well on this? I have a little dill weed that I have stuck in a container, and she grabbed it from the pantry at home and stuck it in her pack. So I think that it's something that gets used in a lot of Harvest Festival dishes as well. And so I think that she's reminding them of that and make sure to pass the little vial of that, especially over to Tot, to let him use it in his food, because he doesn't have any lard because of that. But I think that she might be clearing the guilt over making everybody go on the side quest effectively on the longer way home.
All right, and we'll see as you go on the longer way home whether everyone else feels that sharing a little dill, expunges the cost of this diversion. All right. Now, would anyone else like to tell a story, Conrold or Tot? Tot, you don't have any named burdens, so you could still tell a story from home if you'd like to. You just can't clear them because you don't have them.
As actually, there's this what you left behind in your rush to leave home playbook story thing, and I think since Conrad talked to the chef here, and there's definitely stuff that I miss here from home. We come from this swamp with all its special treats, and we haven't come upon a place here where these special mushrooms grow, even in the toadstool forest. So I'm reminiscing about these desserts that you can make from really only the mushrooms that grow beneath the stilt houses. But
Yes.
Excellent.
Mushroom cakes. Or pies? Probably cakes. Cakes are hilarious. Can I sneak one in too? So a thing in our hometown is that stilt height is kind of a measure of uppityness. That having a taller house means having more structure, and that doesn't it provides like a marginal level of safety, and that's always how people sort of justify it, but really it's mostly just like a conspicuous waste of resources where they have to like fortify this, right? For no really good reason except to have like a slightly taller house. And so that's sort of like a model of like you can assess someone's power by the height of their house. It's not a perfect guide, but it's a good guide. And shit, man, when we got a little bit out, there were people. So imagine you built a house on stilts, right? Except you built it on ground instead of in swamp, and then under it you built another house, and then over it you built another house, and then over that you built another house, and then over that you built another house. They had some ridiculous word for this. I think they called it a tower. But like, holy cow! Like these things stretched up dozens and like dozens of houses high, just like out of rock and who knows what else. And they didn't even have a swamp. Like, what are these people? And I think that is when I first realized how little I was compared to the world beyond home. And when you start seeing wonders like that, like my I do still feel like on some level, given the option, I want to, help my friends shore up the stilts on their house. But like, boy, it just makes that feel like the wrong level of thing to worry about. And so I think that relieves jobs undone, because it just like feels like it's the wrong scope to be weighing on me now that I know what the world is like.
Very good. I like that. All right. You all spend the evening in the inn, and then in the morning, your elven friend and companion helps to pay to rent a boat to travel through the caverns, but you all have to work together to steer it. No need for her to pay for a riversman, since she's got the four of you to help out. Which, if you would like to chart a course into the through the labyrinthian canyons to the home of the elves.
I vote
Who's got
not
the
me.
best king?
Who's got a non-negative king? Hey, Autumn, you want to chart a course?
I have a +1 king.
Say the question one more time. Was there a question there for a second?
Oh no, we were just trying to figure out who had not negative keen, and I think when we're doing like who's gonna steer the boat, we all just kind of look at Autumn. We all just sort
Now,
of
of course,
look
you don't
over
need
there.
non-negative keen to steer the boat. You can always roll with negative keen if you feel like that's the right thing to do in the story.
Yeah, but on the other hand, maybe Autumn wants to steer the boat.
Autumn, when your whole traveling party looks at you, what do you do as everyone's piling into the boat?
I troll them a little bit. Like I look at them blankly, pretending I have no idea what they're trying to convince me to do. And then I try.
All right, and I think the blind archer is going to be giving you directions, but they're really not visually based directions at all. It'll be things like when the water begins to grow angry. When the stones become dangerously unbalanced. It's all kind of slightly ominous things like, at the third turning, you must travel in the way the water does not wish you to go. And she gives you all these directions that they're very normal. But it's up to you to chart the course, so go ahead.
And this is tell a story of the journey and then roll.
Yep.
While we were walking to deliver our whatever burden, we passed through a lot of rivers and flowing water. And I'm pretty familiar with stagnant water for the most part. But we crossed a river, and in the distance we crossed it by raft. There was a pole, there was a barge, it was awkward, but in the distance you could see someone had built an actual I don't think if I know of it as something that we would think of as a path between two islands, except it was huge and it stretched over the river, and it was very obviously something had stepped on the middle of it. Something bad had happened. And I really wish that I could have seen it when it still did the thing that it was supposed to do. When you could just walk across a river. And so this river is reminding me, this river isn't as big, and it's not as it doesn't give me the same sense of awe, but it's still a river, and I'm still curious what's down it.
Excellent. All right.
So, where did the dog do with the die? Okay, there we go. 6 + 1, 7.
All right.
Not my finest roll.
Yeah, let's see.
That's a hit, man. We take those.
So tell me, as you're traveling through the labyrinthian canyons, usually the main obstacle is the river, but what have you heard rumors found refuge in the war on this path? Everyone knows there's more canyons than anyone has explored, so there's always tall stories about what might be down an unexpected turn of the river. What is it you've heard, Autumn, is in here?
Fish that are on fire. I think that they were they weren't involved in the war, but they were driven out of wherever they normally live by the war, and they've sort of taken up in these canyons. And they're dangerous, but if we don't go there, they won't come here. But I suspect we're going to go there.
Yeah, so I think as you're trying to follow the directions, and you're hitting one of the branches of the river where the elf maiden tells you, you must follow the fork that has the faint scent of lavender. But there's rapids, right? So she's just calmly and as you're kind of getting pulled towards the rightward side of the fork, she goes, lavender, and just pointing at the left, and you're like, who thinks I can do this? And that down this fork isn't the smell of lavender, it's the smell of smoke. And that just for a small stretch of the river, happily, there are little fish leaping to and forth that are on fire. But the reason is only for a small stretch of the river, and then up ahead, the river is totally clear a firefish is because you can see one of those ugly rents you've seen in the war in the fabric of reality, and the fish are flowing from elsewhere into the river, and then just a few feet further on, they're flowing right back out through another rent to where they're supposed to be. But your boat is also heading towards that rent in reality. What do you do? You've never been
I think
close to one of these rents.
we each must have a paddle or some kind of oar. So I think the safest thing to do is to rush past before the boat catches fire. I mean, we must pierce through it. That's the only thing that could work, because going in the other direction than the current is probably
All
not
right, Tom,
getting
it
us
sounds like
anywhere.
you're going to negotiate this with Swift then, since you're powering past the fish in the rent.
So, is that actually running? Are we in peril already, or is this negotiating an obstacle?
It could be peril. If you'd like to run, you can run. I think you're free to negotiate an obstacle at this point if you'd rather. It really depends on how
it felt pretty dangerous already, so I was assuming it was running.
Go for it.
But the problem with running, we are all in the same boat, so it's kind of difficult to name somebody that is most.
Just tell me who's most important to you to get through in this boat, and don't worry too much about whether you'll all be in the same boat by the end of the move.
I mean, we're doing this all for the elven lady in some sense. So, in some sense, I'm most worried for her because she can't see what's up, what's ahead. She can smell it, and that's the only. We haven't even given her a hint, essentially, yeah, because we work so well together. We just all realize now we need to. Yeah. So that's probably who I'm most worried for.
All right. Well, then go ahead and roll.
So it's an 8.
It's an 8.
Oh
All
boy.
right. Yeah. Are you saying something to the elf lady to try and make her aware of what you're facing?
Heads down or something like that. It's really the only thing I can do, and I'm in the front of the boat with her. So since only me and her really get past it, maybe this rent of reality cuts the boat in half.
I will go with that. All right. So as I'm had my own ideas of moves, but I'm happy to take a hard move from a player. Yeah. The boat kind of brushes the edge of that rent in reality, and it does split, though it splits in such a strange way. It's almost as though the boat is aging backwards, and where the boards have brushed the rent, their bark is growing over them, bits are blossoming to bloom, but branching around that rent. So by the time 3 of you have been dumped straight into the water, there's just 2 trees, little saplings starting to grow in the river. But Tot, as you warned the elf, she didn't have that much time to react, but you guys have heard about the blind archers, though not seen them in battle. She just reaches into her quiver, sights a bit without seeing on the shore, and lets fly an arrow with a bit of rope, which pulls her and you just to the edge of a shore. Just you, Tot. And you can see your friends kind of bobbling, going under in the water, avoiding the fiery fish and the rent of reality as they get swept around the curve, past the saplings. Travelers in the water, what do you do?
This sounds perilous, but but I guess it is an obstacle as well.
Yeah. I will say, hide would really surprise me that you can pitch me on it as needed.
I mean, if you grabbed if there were branches, the last time I went tubing out of character, we kept getting banged into the side with all of these overhanging branches. But I think, I think as we're being swept around, I think Violet at least wants to see if she can grab everybody or get everybody, see if we can get hold of each other's clothes or something like that, so that we can be like a little connection and see then if we can all kick in the same direction. Then if we're all attached to each other, then maybe we can propel ourselves toward the shore.
All right, so you're gathering your crew together. Yeah, that sounds like
Yeah.
negotiating an obstacle to me.
Yeah. Okay. And can I roll with crew because it is gathering us?
I think so.
Okay. Oh yay. Okay, so that's 3 + 5 is an 8 + 2, which is 10.
Excellent. Well, tell me how it is you manage to get your friends together and, out of the water as needed.
I think she sees, I don't think she knows Autumn can handle herself, and in fact can get out of this just fine herself. So she's making sure that like she kind of gets a hold of Conrold and just sort of like looks at Autumn like, can you help us out, please? And just like make sure that before she pulls her into something which could have drown us as much as save us, is willing to kind of angle us toward the shore and kind of use her sense in the water. I think that this really kind of like reminds her of reminds Violet of seeing the people who are really good at being rangers, really good at navigating. Because in the swamp, you have the people who are good at holding down the camp. You have people who are good at going out into the swamp, into the woods. It's a really dangerous thing to do that, and you have to train to do that. So I think that she often would see them doing that and kind of felt like she couldn't be that person who went out into the swamp. And that's something that I'm kind of feeling like she didn't really have what it took to make it out there. Because if you are, but like seeing them seeing them in their boats and their gear, always going out at night when it was easiest, but also really dangerous because of the animals in the water. I think this just reminds her of that sense that like you were really supposed to be in a house somewhere and not in the middle of a river doing anything like this. So that's her burden. I think that would just be called homebody, probably.
All right. So you've all come out of the water, away from the fish, away from the rent, but without a boat. Autumn and Conrold, what do you do as you bedraggled, soaked, make it to part of the shore?
I mean, we've still got a job to do, right? Like, we're on a detour, but we're heading home. And I think that, like, my inclination is to treat our surprise lack of a boat as an obstacle and try to negotiate it. But, if I am a specialist, I am a specialist in force. And so if Autumn pipes up, I'm very likely to defer.
I think I want to check in with the archer first.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure if our bandages were, if what we used to treat the archer was waterproof.
Yeah, I think she and Tot come round the bend to where you guys have washed up, and she's walking still a little unsteadily, but not any the worse for wear from this, semi-dunking. She kind of gives a like profound sigh, and it's almost as though like you can see her like resisting the urge to say like, I had said lavender, right? But it's like, like touches the bandage and like actively overcomes that to be patient with you guys, even though she gave incredibly clear directions.
You know what? Okay. So I think I want to take advantage of her. That she knows this place in a way that I can tell I can't comprehend. And do we assemble ourselves a raft, like knock down a couple of trees and assemble a raft? Like, how do we proceed? I think I want to lean on our earned kinship with her to try and negotiate the obstacle of needing to get her home while currently not having a raft. And that could be making bridges, that could be making a boat, that could be a magic elf signal flare. Like, I really have no idea at this point, but I'm leaning on that. I think negotiating with True.
I think that sounds reasonable.
Cool. Yeah, great. There's no story here. That's a hit. That's a 7.
All right. Yeah, I think as you're kind of trying to draw her out, find out like what her advice is here. Yes. Yeah, she's reluctant to bring this up, but there is a shortcut that was not how she was planning to get there with you, since it's a private shortcut, and she heard it might have been compromised in the war anyway, so she can hardly guarantee that it will be safe. But they're not far from the entrance to a cave that should bring you underground into the land of the elves. It's not a very nice place. It's full of traps, both kind of natural and magical, and it's just a lot of unpleasant creatures that live there. So usually, it's more of a place that they might retreat through in a catastrophe, or would rely on its own natural terrors to keep anyone from approaching them through. But I suppose we don't have that much of a choice. It's for the best, I suppose, if we just grit our teeth and move through the cavern of sightless shadows.
Great. I think Conrold does his best to be chipper about this. That he gets that this is bad, but that we've done like a bunch of dire things, and the idea of like trying to navigate this river, which we couldn't quite do last time, on a raft that's like 2 logs glued together sounds like vastly worse. And just like, okay, it's another like demonic cave. Like, we've done a couple of these, man, we're gonna make it.
All right, Violet, when you guys step into the cave, how is the cave full of the sounds? What's wrong with the echoes of song you hear?
The echoes of song?
Yeah, there's echoes of song, but there's something very wrong and upsetting about them. What is it?
I think it's that it doubles it somewhat. So like you can hear the echo, but it almost sounds like you hear the echo first before you hear the actual thing. And you're not like the first thing you hear is really like airy and reverberating, and then you hear the same thing, but as if it's the actual thing. So it's just really upsetting because it sounds like it's in the wrong order, and you don't know. Makes it hard to tell how far away it is or what direction it's coming in.
And are you using your lantern as you go through? All right.
Yeah.
Which of you would like to chart a course through the cavern of sightless shadows?
I don't want to, but I feel some obligation. If somebody else wants to take the lead, they absolutely can. If not, I'll take it by default. Oh boy. All right. So tell a story of the journey. Is that where we're at?
We're at, yep, tell a story of the journey and roll plus keen.
Cool.
And I can tell you that what the elf maiden can tell you about navigating this is that there's still kind of a little trickle of river, just a very small one, barely enough to fill a canteen. But she tells you the way to navigate it, and this doesn't solve any of the problems of what else is in here, is that you should keep tasting the water. And if it becomes brackish, you've taken the wrong fork. And, you should turn around the moment the water stops tasting sweet, because the further you go along the wrong path, the more poisonous the water and everything else will become. But other than that, it's easy to navigate.
I volunteer her for taste testing.
She does have the best sense of taste, I'm sure. Yeah. Okay. So, story of the journey. We've done the.
It's maybe about pickling in brine
I'm thinking about
because of all the salty.
So
Yeah.
that's a little homey. So we have gone through a variety of lush places on our way there and a little bit on our way back. And sometimes you see when we were in the Great Forest, I was less attached to the meats than some people, but I was very attached to the fruit. That there were fruit that were lush and rich and beautiful, that you have a good taste, and you want to keep that thing. And I became deeply convinced that we could grow. There was a plant with these super weird fruits that were just like hard crusts that you could smash, and they were full of tasty seeds. And I, ate a number of those, but also kept a pouch full of seeds that I was hoping to try and plant back home. I don't have much of a green thumb, but I know some people who do, and it would be so worth it if we could make one of these work. But when we were in the Broken Lands, one of the things that most stood out was just the utter lack of life, and the grayness, and you're not surprised that the end of the world started here. And when it felt dire and felt like we might not succeed, or maybe we would, I was overcome with this desire to leave the Broken Lands better than we found them, one way or another. And we found ourselves crossing this stream that had this same sort of the thing that brings it to mind is the way that it had the same sort of magical association with taste, that you would, it was so clear when the ground was so gray. It had a blue and a sparkle, and just felt inviting in a way that almost nothing out there was. And when you tasted it, it tasted fresh. It tasted like life. It tasted like the smell of cut grass. And all at once, I was overcome with the idea that this, more than home, needed the seeds I was carrying. that this is where I would try to leave this little bit of life giving. And so I am telling a story of what I planted in the Broken Land, very literally, alongside I had it right here. Alongside a drink with the scent of shorn grass.
Excellent. I love it.
And I'm rolling with advantage because I fucking need it. What is my? I am. What even roll was this? I'm sorry, I lost it.
You're rolling with Keen because you were charting a course.
Is that? Yo, advantage.
What did you roll?
That's a
Yeah.
5 + 3 - 1 is 7.
All right, that gets you there. So,
If you didn't have advantage, what was your roll?
It would have been a 6.
Well, good job weaving in that detail.
Man.
I think as you're traveling through the caverns, there are a couple moments where the elf maiden is like very insistent, like you pause or like wait, you can hear something moving in the darkness, and she apologizes to you a bit that she doesn't give you all the details about what you're avoiding, but it's just she's showing a great act of trust in taking you through this way, and it's still important you not be able to take anyone else through this way. But as you're moving through, there's a fresher scent, a scent not unlike the scent you were describing, Conrold. Just that scent of fresh grass and fresh forest, unlike this dark and gloomy cave. But then you hear the clash of metal on metal, and as you round a corner, you can see both the end of the cavern in the far distance, but just the difference between no light but the lantern and some light somewhere else is so notable to you. But in between you and it must be a dozen or so suits of armor, rusted and old, fighting each other. And if you look to the elf maiden, she's confused and kind of tilts her head and goes like, those are from the era before my grandfather's grandfather. Their wars are done, but the armor appears to not be done fighting, and there's just sword upon sword, like even a trident. You see this, which is a pitched battle taking place just among weapons and pieces of armor, and it's between you and the exit. What do you do?
I assume that's a broad you, right? Because I just talked a whole bunch.
Yeah. Can I sing a song of the end of those wars?
Yes, I love this.
Yeah. So I think Violet is like, oh yeah, I read about those in the fairy tales, and she starts to sing a song about the victory that was won and the defeat that happened. I think probably from looking at the designs on the swords, which is fantastical, because as one of the little folk who stayed indoors, Violet did a lot of reading and a lot of reading about elves, and in fact traveling with elves has been a little bit of rubbing the glamour off of it a tiny bit, because she's like, oh right, yes, they're so sensitive and very okay, but this is kind of amazing to see this battle happening that she'd heard about. But yeah, she's gonna sing the song about how this ended, and hopefully they can listen to that as well. So that was a 8 + 2 true. If this is, I guess it's technically rally the flock, which I'm sort of using as a weapon. But So if I'm rolling true, yeah. So okay, 4 plus 4 is 8 plus 2 is 10. Hey.
All right, yeah, I'm into this. Yeah, tell me about what it looks like as these suits of armor find rest, hearing the end of their battle sung.
I think there's something about the magic of the cave that as she is singing about it, there's a kind of breeze that kicks up, and as it blows over, you kind of see a trace of who was filling the armor at the time, as it was sort of like in ghostly outlines. And and they kind of turn their head not in the direction of her or the song, but as if they're looking at something else that we can't see. And as it passes, as the breeze passes them, and the lines of them kind of fade, you sort of see the armor and everything sort of fall then, as if it doesn't have anything in it anymore. But you kind of, the song tells the story about the messenger who arrived, who brought the key thing that they needed to know, and so you almost are seeing it as the as everything sort of collapses. By the end, the song tells the rest of the story.
Excellent. And this is a good question in the chat. Does your song have the same weird pre-echo in the cave, or does it ring out differently than the songs we've been hearing?
I think that yeah, I think that the noise of the battle had that, but as you hear the song, like, that begins to kind of fade away, as like the fact of, it kind of counteracts that weird sort of time sense that was happening.
Excellent. Well, we're going to take our last break, and when we come back, we're going to arrive in the, stronghold of the elves, hopefully find Fenric, and then move towards the end of this journey. So let's come back at 5 after, if that works for everyone. See you then.
Yeah. Shut up. Shut up. Sorry.
All right. Danielle, are you out there? We're a minute early, but
I thought we said 07, but honestly, I don't remember.
I think I said 5 after, but I don't remember now either.
No, you're right. I think 07 is not what it was.
It was 07 one of the other times, but then again, perhaps like time itself has stopped.
I am pretty sure time stopped in March. I don't believe time.
Apparently, Christmas is going to be March 300, according to a dude I saw on Twitter.
That sounds totally plausible. I've actually independently decided that that is the correct way to account for time, and that today is March 205th or whatever. I feel like the last day I experienced in regular time was about March 15th, and that everything since then has been totally fake.
Yeah.
Remember when we had plans? We had plans.
I mean, I remember when my family covered all our doorknobs in copper tape because we thought people would still be visiting, but we were just creating surfaces that had a lower half-life for the virus, and now we need to take all the copper tape off.
Yeah, the Wilsons did that, and I was there a couple of times because they did that in the end of February, the beginning of March, and we didn't stop seeing people till mid-March.
Yeah, I stand by it as an attempted plan, but it's pretty funny because it instead makes it feel more like I am part of a weird ritual. Yes, in the time of pestilence, we cover our doors in copper. Even if
Just
it's
out of
actually,
curiosity, where are y'all physically located?
I live in New Jersey.
I live in Virginia.
I'm in Germany. We have toilet paper fortresses too, but it's I think every society has their strange rituals to
It's actually super
praise themselves.
We had a super serious toilet paper shortage, which is something that hit me at a really inopportune time, because I'm the sort of person who extreme bulk orders toilet paper, and so I order a year and a half's worth at a time, and I just happen to be running out right as the shortage hit, for totally unrelated reasons, and so it was all of a sudden I was oh my God, do I need my mom to mail me toilet paper because I'm literally not going to be able to get it anywhere? Danielle just blinked. Is that a good sign?
Not exactly. 1 second. Let me see if I can.
And now they're gone.
Yeah. I can't. There we go.
Blink. Is that a good sign?
Have we got you now, Danielle?
Not exactly. Yeah, I
can't.
There we go.
Danielle? Sorry, it keeps doubling up, or is it gone now? Me?
I've kicked one of you out, so I think that
I've
will solve
kicked
the
one of you
problems.
out.
But you
Okay.
I
really,
think that will solve the problem.
Fantastic, because it wouldn't
Really,
it wouldn't let me find the tab, even though I could hear you all wondering, and it just my access to it had vanished, so I had to find the link in the email and open it up again, and then there were two of me, just I fully replicated the strange magical cave that was.
all right.
let's see.
Are there people still hearing the
echo I'm hearing?
Yeah, I assume it's coming from Danielle. I assume it's coming from Danielle.
All right.
Danielle, just mute for a second.
Just mute for a second.
All right. Now we're good? Okay. Danielle, it's just important you mute while other people are speaking, and then I think we're good.
On a related note, I believe Violet can still cross out one of the burdens, can't she?
Yes, because she sang so well, everyone listening could clear a named burden when she rallied the mob.
Did we lose her? Sad.
All right. Well, while she's rejoining, if any of you has a named burden that you clear as the result of hearing that song of the end of the war, go for it.
There are no named burdens owned by people other than Violet.
All right. Violet, you're able to clear a named burden if you want from singing that song. And in the meantime, let me just. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. No. And is my mic working again? Okay. Great. I think that having been able to know that because she was a homebody and been able to do the reading to know about the battle, she feels slightly more useful because of that, and it's not an insecurity with her in the same way.
Excellent. So as you guys come out into the stronghold of the elves, for a moment it feels a little like home in that there are kind of stilted houses, except as you get closer to them, they're much too big because they're not kind of stilted houses. They're stilted mansions practically, and they're not built on stilts. It's just the elves take their time and they plant trees specifically to grow into supports for houses that are trained out of their branches. So clearly, looking at this, even accounting for their long lives, a grandparent tends the house that their grandchildren will someday live in, but you plant houses for your grandchildren, and may or may not see anyone inhabit them yourself. So it's a bit like home, but a bit unlike home. As you make your way through here, I'll just montage a little, but the archer that you've brought safely home, is received, and you receive a formal audience with her mother, who is, if not a queen per se, something you understand is roughly like a marchioness, perhaps. Elf society is confusing. What's legend and what's real and what's translated is all very confusing. But it's something you just mostly don't have this kind of person at home, but they're important. And she tells you that, she's very grateful for you safely bringing her daughter home. Though this is all in translation from High Elven to you. It's not clear whether she can speak your language or whether it's simply that she does not. But it's the kind of thing you get it in a very flowery form from the court translator, something like, the dearest arrow of our quiver brought back to nestle among her fellows, splinted, made whole, and at one point, the translator even kind of gives you a big look as though you're supposed to understand something as a literary allusion, but not to anything you've read. So it's a confusing place, and you're even invited to a formal tea, but after none of you can kind of reach the ground from the chairs, you're offered cushions on the floor, and the elves kneel, towering above you still, in a very gracious way to try and make you feel less like tiny, insignificant people, but not great at this. What do you do, and what do you ask for?
Is Violet gonna ask about her dude?
Well, I think Violet definitely asks about Fenric. Is like, actually, your daughter let us know. I think also she nudges Tot and is like, they might have something better than lard here, like they might have some cooler stuff. But she definitely asks about Fenric and kind of gives the description: short, skinny, our size, but even smaller. Is there someone like this here? Have you seen us before? And is he okay?
It seems like a younger brother of the woman you saved. Exclaims something which the translator kind of translates on instinct, and then looks embarrassed about, oh, mouse, which I guess is some kind of nickname Fenric has acquired. And they explain to you that Fenric, is very stubborn and wants to undergo the trial to become a dedicate, which should happen in the next month or so, but they'll bring you to see him. You get the impression no one thinks this is a great idea, but no one knows him well enough to stop him. The youngest brother, and I'm just montaging a little, keeping an eye on the time, Definitely 100% thinks Fenric can do this, but also appears to think of Fenric as his pet. So
Okay.
he's as tall as one of you sitting on the other one's shoulders, this young boy, and is probably about 6 in your ages.
Okay. Wow.
So I think he's the one to take you to where Fenric, is preparing in kind of a meditative garden and is just babbling with the poor translator following behind about how Fenric is so strong for someone so small. And, they play together, and sometimes he puts a big box over Fenric, and Fenric, like, bops around on the inside a little, and then he takes it off and goes, "Hello, mouse!" And then, Fenric makes noises. He doesn't know his language, but they have so much fun.
Violet is just increasingly agitated at this, like wants to have hope at this, and is also like, this sounds terrible. I am very worried.
Conrold is trying really hard not to laugh and not quite succeeding.
Yeah. I think Conrad and I are making prolonged eye contact and trying not to make each other laugh.
And the translator's trying to be very formal about all this, but it's like feels extremely awkward even for an elf.
Yeah, I think Violet's just nodding. It's like he always could get into things. Is just like nodding and is feeding the translators things to give back to this enthusiastic host, because she's very grateful that his novelty means that, like, he's been taken care of and fed and not, alone somewhere or like eaten. So
all right. In the garden, you find Fenric. He's going through some kind of process of kind of fasting and discipline in preparation for the trial to become an initiate, which the little boy keeps telling you about, in a relatively confusing way, right? He's like, I tried to sneak him food from the kitchens, but he said he didn't want any. Do you want any? And he just pulls out of his pocket what looks like basically kind of if flowers were growing out of a cookie. That's part of how it works. Instead of M&Ms, just like active living flowers. He said he was fasting, but what about you? I'm not fasting.
I think she just kind of nods. I mean, sure, she'll take a cookie. It looks too strange to just eat right away, but she will take one and put it in a put it in whatever pouch, like a crumb of it, maybe a flower with like a cookie back, cookie roots, and so it was like, thank you very much. Yeah, about the fasting. I gotta let's talk. I gotta talk to him about that. I think, can we see him?
Yes,
over.
You are in the garden. Yeah. He's sitting and staring up at what's a big, kind of woven vine curtain blocking something from view, but he's looking at it in a very determined way and is way below it relative to where an elf would be. What do you guys do?
Well, I think Violet runs over and is like, Fenric, what? And just fully disrespecting the ritual. Sorry, Fenric. I think she's just really glad. Like the last time she saw him, he was helping her scrub pots out while they were having this conversation. And so I think she kind of grabs shoulders, just kind of inspects him, makes sure he seems okay, and is like, what are you doing? How did you get here? Are you okay? Now you want to give up your eyes? You want to be blind? What is this? What? Are you sure? What's going on?
I've heard all the stories we learned together, and when you said that anyone could make a difference in this big war, I wanted to do it too. And I know they say the war is over, but there's always some way to make a difference. That's what you taught us, Suspender. And I've met the blind archers. We had them in our storybooks, and they said that if I can pass the trial, they don't care how small I am. If I'm just worthy, I can do it with them. And there's a lot of people who still need help. So that's what I want to do. I don't want to go home until I've gotten to mend something too. And he looks at you, he's like, looks at your whole fellowship and is like, you guys, I heard about you. You really helped, but would you be going home if you hadn't done anything yet?
I guess that was for everyone else to chime in. I'm full massaging her temples right now.
Yeah, what do you say to Noodle's little brother?
Yes, it's the harvest festival soon. I mean, we missed already the strawberry fair, so it's really time to hurry. I say to him, because I mean, I know that the one blind archer we brought home is maybe the only one that ever came back. So I know what big risk he's taking, even if it's just finishing off the last few of the Doomlord's beasts. And then, yes, I'm reminding him of one of the pranks of his brother. I mean, I'm disguising it as a prank. It was really mean, but I'm reminding him of the one occasion when he and his brother were really collecting lunch money, and and how much fun he had back home. Even if it's cruel on myself, but I really want to remind him of what went on back home, and so I'm really trying to use my guileless move, and he's still a total stranger, but maybe I'm stretching it a bit, but he has to respond with a story of his home, and maybe that's the way I can pull him out of the ritual.
Yeah, I think he's at least a stranger to you at this point, since you've both done so much growing up away from each other. So he says to you, well, I know sometimes I was more playing jokes with Noodles, and I'm sorry about that a little, I guess. I guess when people would say, that everything has a purpose, even the smallest thing, that we're all kind of small instruments in the hands of someone larger. I sometimes thought of that as being my brother. He always looked out for me, and since I felt like everyone else had a tough time because they didn't have a Noodles, but if they did, they'd be having as much fun as I was. But I think I thought too small. I think I can be part of something bigger than what Noodles does, and this is my chance.
I'm running out of arguments. I'm looking over to Autumn. Maybe she can have one last go and try to convince this boy.
I think I'm going to ask him why he picked this. Like, why did you pick this way to help?
Yeah, and he says, this all happened. We sent you off because of things like that, and he gestures to the vine-covered, whatever back there. But the elves say this isn't the first time that rifts have opened, and if you can look deep enough into them, you learn how to close them. And that's what I want to do. That's what I'm getting ready to do tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay.
So what do you decide, Fellowship?
Can I get a word in with him? Because he asked us a question and nobody's attempted to answer it yet. And I think that is Conrold's inclination, is just to answer him straight. There is a great big world out there, full of wonders, full of dangers, but it'll never be home. And that I gesture around, I'm implicating you guys whether you agree or not. We ventured out to save home. And if we got, 59 out of 60 of the way there, and it was done and we weren't needed, we'd still be going home. you can, when you talk about doing good as a little person and doing good in little ways, that means doing things you can do even if they're hard, but it doesn't mean doing the things that you can't. And so the question I pose to you, and this is not a judgment, is what you're doing something hard, or is it a vain pursuit of glory? Because I'll support you in the first, but I'll drag your ass home in the second.
All right. Well, I think since you've all said your piece to Fenric, I'm actually going to move us into epilogues and use that to help establish what happens to him and what happens to you. Because
I think that Violet does, after Conrold says that, does give him. She is like, Fenric, I do think that you are brave, and I know that the world has been a lot bigger than I thought it was before we did this adventure, but even if you did do this, you need this to remember us by as well, and gives him a little protection amulet. Unless I was supposed to do that in the epilogue, but I think I want him to have that.
Yeah. All right. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to let you guys kind of together, by telling your epilogue, settle a little about what happens to Fenric as well as you. So you don't have to make him part of your epilogue if you don't want to, but whoever feels most invested kind of weave that in. Because at this point, whatever happens with Fenric, the elves will give you a safe escort the rest of the way home in gratitude for bringing home their beloved daughter. Now, as you reach home, each player narrates a short epilogue for their character. It can be a single scene or a montage. Everyone incorporates one story of growth, which you'll see in the epilogue tab, into your epilogue. You can take them as literal or metaphorical, and a growth prompt can be used by more than one player. All of them can be used by more than one player. If you have cleared all of your burdens, you may incorporate a second story of growth into your epilogue. For every named burden you still have, you must add an element from the stories of amends. And for every unnamed burden you have, you must add an element from the stories of isolation. So taking a look over those lists and over your own levels of burden here at the end of our adventure, would anyone like to start? And I believe Tot and Conrold both have named and cleared all their burdens. That Violet has named all of them, but I think not necessarily cleared all of them. Is that correct?
Yes, I think I've cleared 2 of them, and there's 1 left.
That matches what I thought, yeah. And I believe that Autumn has 1 unnamed burden.
I'm happy to go first if folks aren't ready.
I say go for it.
I think I have the kind of fortune that you get in these sorts of stories when things have gone well. I think when we get home, we discover that another people displaced by the war have set up camp nearby and are working their way through integrating. And that our people are sort of debating whether to bring them in because they're strange and they're a little bit violent and they're big, but they are also, in some ways, people of the muck, in a way that we should be able to identify with. And when we get back, I find among them the creature that I had to abandon. And I find that the house that I left behind was like, our equivalent of condemned. it hasn't fallen, but the family has moved on because it was easier to find a new dwelling than to patch it up. And I think I get to keep my promises. I get to keep them both. That I put this house back together. I get those stilts back on, and maybe I raise it a little bit because that's a power I have. Because I've learned a lot about building, and I am much stronger than they left me, and I am not afraid of the sludge. And that when it's clear, the original owners have moved on, and I can invite in the person I left behind. And so a torn thing is mended, and an abandoned home has a new tenant. And that's me.
Excellent.
I'm out.
Thank you. All right. Violet, Todd, or Autumn?
I could go next. I think at the Harvest Festival, two very unlikely drinking companions are seen. It's Noodles and it's Todd, and they drink really like brothership, exchanging stories from way back. But then they talk about Fenric, and for a moment, the mood is way more serious, and that's, I think, when this song that the people sing at the Harvest Festival gains a new verse, because it's about those that came back and those that didn't, and among those that didn't come back was obviously Fenric. And we will maybe add another verse when we hear of him again, but for now he has stayed with the elves, and that's how the additional verse ends. Yeah.
Excellent. Violet or Autumn?
I think that having gone home with knowing his decision to stay with the elves, everything like that, I think when they get back and everything is different, Violet always expected to just go back to the home, to just still be in charge and just still watch the kids. But many of the children have grown up. They found their own kind of hierarchy and how to take care of themselves. There's another youngling who is kind of, she walks up and there's a new coat of paint on the fence, on the stilts. They've been taken care of, and I think that she sees that there's somebody else who is managing it, and so she ends up, obviously thanking them, and everyone is happy to see her, but she gives her lantern to the child, the grown up now, who is taking care of them, so that they can have it when they need it, and that is the gift passed on to someone new, who needs it to not go out and to always be able to keep watch. And I think that she finds her own house on stilts for the first time, and is like having to make out, probably nearby where everyone is, so if somebody needs help, she can, if Conrold needs help with revamping, she can come over and help, but has to learn to live in a house that doesn't have a bajillion people running around in it. But I think that that she kind of keeps watch. She just sort of like keeps a little, she may not have her lantern out anymore, but she has one that's a little bit similar, and it kind of hangs on the gate, and she makes sure that it's always lit, just in case, listens to the verse at the Harvest Festival about the
youngest, smallest blind archer and all of his cool exploits that he will no doubt accomplished, or no doubt has accomplished. But she keeps that lamp lit just in case anybody returning needs to know that they are welcome at this house. And that's the fire that does not go out in the night on her gate.
I really like that. Autumn.
I think that the house that was next to the house that I was intending to move into has fallen into rot. It's somewhere near, I'm suddenly drawing a blank on your name. But in a way that's okay. Like, the house isn't there anymore, but it's fertile ground now. Someone is growing something, someone is maintaining a herd of frogs. Like, it's sad, and it was going to be mine, or I thought it was going to be mine, but it's not. The person that I thought was going to wait for me didn't. And so there's a little montage of like me looking sadly at the land and then sort of smiling to myself. And I think that my end is that I'm walking away. That I'm glad to be home, but there's not things there for me anymore. And so I'm going to go find, I know there's still things to be mended. It's not going to be a grand adventure like the grand adventure that we had, but there's things to be fixed, and so I leave.
Very good. And since none of you spoke too definitively about what happened to Fenric after he stayed, I won't speak either. I will say that, a long time after you all return home for the first time, because it takes a long time for, stories of the big people to ever reach your village, you just hear among kind of songs that are new or sayings you haven't heard that sometimes people who travel through kind of give a shrug and say, as though it's an old expression, it takes the smallest shaft to pierce the hardest heart. But it's not something they think is connected with the story. It's just something they've heard people say. And that has been our story of coming back again from the Broken Lands. For anyone watching, thank you for hearing us tell this. And if you're interested in playing this game yourself, check out Cloven Pine Games at Cloven Pine Games or clovenpinegames.itch.io. And you can find the game in Codex Home of the Gauntlets Codex. And it's been a real pleasure playing with all of you. So thank you.